Do I have to introduce you?
I mean, do you want to just start with, well, alright, let's get to it.
But, like, how will they know you? This is Charlotte, my
lifelong friend who just happens to be cis and straight and white, and why is she in this podcast?
If we even want to call it a podcast.
And why is she in
drawing session?
This discussion. Okay.
Alright, cool. Hello, everyone. I'm here today with my lovely friend and roommate, Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
That is my name. I don't have a last name.
Right. And today I guess we're going to be drawing and discussing several different topics.
Alright, so first topic that we have here is coming out.
Right. Yeah. So, you were the first person I actually came out to.
Yes.
Which is, yes, you have it as a trophy. And obviously that was weird for the both of us, especially since we were in middle school.
Very young, yeah.
But what was weirder is that other people started coming out to you,
right.
2 weeks after.
Yeah, so, yeah, to preface that...
Domino effect, right?
So, Sean, one of my greatest friends, came out to me as trans when I was in middle school sometime. I don't remember exactly how old we were. Around the exact same time, my brother...
It was 7th grade.
7th grade, yeah. And around the same time, my brother also came out to me as trans. And I remember, and also at the time, I had a third friend who also came out to me as trans, all female to male. And I remember being angry, not because you all were trans, but just because I was so confused, and I thought that this was a very common occurrence, and it just...
I mean, you just saw 3 in a row, like...
Right, I was confused because I was like, how often does this happen? Like, is this very common? I just never knew about it. Why is this all happening right now? What's happening? So it was very confusing, but obviously it all worked out, and I'm not transphobic, so that's wonderful.
Oh, good. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised, though, because you, did not show any of that at all. You just powered through it. What a trooper.
Well,
you were very supportive.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I grew up with a pretty liberal mother, who was always very accepting of the LGBT community in general. Her vision of trans people at the time was a little dated, to say the least. Still calling trans people, hermaphrodites and transsexual.
Well,
yeah.
Love that word.
Yeah, sorry. You might have to blur that out.
No, that's all good.
But yeah, so it took her a long time to adjust as well. But yeah, it was really interesting in general.
I'm surprised. Did you ever feel that way? How your mother felt at all? Not
really.
Because that's totally okay since people are raised in those environments.
Right.
I don't blame you if you did.
Well, in all honesty, I think you were my first experience with trans people, so you were the first outlet to basically my understanding of what someone who is trans is. And of course I knew you, and I knew you were a good person, and I knew that this was something that you fully believed in, so obviously there's something more to it than I currently understand. So there's that too.
Almost like all people should get to know trans people before they go and judge
them. I mean, if you're listening to this right now, you probably have a trans friend, but if you don't, you should go make one. Mm-hmm. Make one today.
Seek them out. Find them.
Find the trans people. All right. It's a good one. So going into that and your friends coming out, I wanted to talk about how to best support your friends who are trans or who are coming out as trans.
As a cis person.
As a cis person, yes, for clarification. For an example, I have a friend who will remain nameless for the sake of this video, who recently came out to me as trans and wanted me to, quote-unquote, push her to transition. And as someone who is cis and as someone who doesn't really understand the actual process of transitioning and what it feels like on an emotional, spiritual level, I felt I was not the one who was fit to quote unquote push her or even help her transition beyond offering any advice I can of what womanhood is like from my perspective.
Right. And that's really complicated territory because, as like trans people too, like we would never want to like push someone into something that they're uncomfortable with. So
Right.
it's this weird, concoction of how do you help them without like feeling like you're maybe like, I don't know. It is complicated. I know what you're like saying, and that is very difficult.
Yeah, so I guess a question would be like, for you, would be like, what's an example of something that would be very helpful and constructive in terms of encouraging them to transition? Excuse me. And what is an example of something that would be harmful and like pushing them or basically overstepping your bounds in terms of trying to help them?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, and like you've been doing, is being there for her. And I know like some people may think like, well, is there like a point of being like there for too much? And I think that goes back to the whole point of this conversation, which is this is their journey, whatever person they are, and so they need to go through it and make those decisions, those big decisions on their own. So like, obviously you can help them pick out, or help her specifically pick out, clothes, and help her like find a style that she enjoys, but it's the one that she enjoys. Like you can just like help her get it that way, but obviously in the end it should be her choice. So being there for her, that's the biggest thing. I think the harmful things that you can do, which obviously I know you wouldn't do specifically, and sometimes you don't even like realize that you might be doing something harmful just because you've never been in this position, like you said, like as a cis person. So, harmful things I would say is just be careful of like your language. Obviously, that starts with pronouns and name usage and whatnot, and then just be gentle around, especially with clothing, like body dysphoria and whatnot. Being supportive if they feel like, sorry, my dog is snoring. Be supportive that if they feel nervous. Okay. Definitely, like, if they are starting to, like, feel backing away, that's your point to also back away. You should never, like, be like, well, you could try, like, this, just, like, give them space. You can always go back to a store, or you can always go back to a clinic, or an endocrinologist. You can always reschedule. So, use, like, that as indication to always be listening to them and making sure that they are okay with this next step.
Yeah.
But I think, like, for your friend specifically, she just needs to be aware that, like, this is her journey, and not this person's journey. So,
right.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I cannot imagine because I'm cis.
Right.
But again,
you can also like point her in the direction of trans support groups and trans people,
right,
in the area or online even. That could YouTube as like a resource.
Phoenix Animations.
Already here.
So would you say that it's important for every trans person to have at least one other trans person in their life to use as guidance?
Oh, definitely. Like any sort of like mentor or person that they can just have like a random question, once in a while. You guys don't have to be best friends. You can be. I've had like I think 2 or 3 mentors in my life that were, that just someone that has gotten top surgery and you haven't gotten top surgery yet, so you want advice on that, and or if you don't want top surgery but you want to talk it through with them and just better understand why you don't feel you need it, or because every transition is different, and some people don't need bottom surgery and whatnot. So I definitely agree that and it helps to have like someone who is also female to male or male to female. It doesn't have to be that way. because any trans mentor or trans person in your life will be helpful in getting like an a trans card into the community. But yeah, definitely agree. That would be super helpful.
Cool. So I want to completely change gears here. I want to talk about hormones.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, speaking of the same girl that we were just talking about, my friend, she recently said to me that she wanted to get something called HRT. And when I brought it to you, you said
that recently I've heard that HRT is not really the correct terminology, that we're trying to like get away from that terminology. Okay. So HRT stands for hormone replacement therapy. It's been used a lot, and I think it's kind of aged out, similar to how gender disorder was kind of like in the therapy realm, where like you had to get this condition given to you and government labeled as gender disorder, dysphoria disorder, and so I think it stems off that, but I also think it's kind of a scientific thing. It's even just base level of when you take it apart, hormone replacement therapy. Like, we all have estrogen and testosterone. So when you're replacing something, it's like, what are you replacing? You're kind of like adding. Right. And so I think a lot of people have been doing just hormone therapy. I reference it as just hormones, and then a lot of times I either say estrogen or testosterone, because that usually helps just people differentiate them too. It's very direct, it's like, what are hormones? I think also, and this is just personally, I haven't heard this online, but like HRT and specifically hormones, they're given like a bad rap because they're associated with like steroids and whatnot, and that's like a very different kind of it's a very different kind of chemical that is put into us. Like, we don't have what bodybuilders, cis men use as not the direct same thing. So I think it just has gotten kind of old and misused. But I could be completely wrong. Like, I heard it online a while ago, and it kind of like made sense to me, and so I've been just kind of boiling on it for a bit. What do you think? Because you come from a biology background.
Right, yeah. So I am a biology major. It's actually very interesting witnessing my trans friends and the trans community through a scientific eye, because a lot of people use quote unquote genetics don't lie as a way to discredit people who are trans. Right. When first of all, there's more than just XX and XY chromosomes. You know that, of course, they're intersex people. There are people who are missing X chromosomes or part of X chromosomes, etc. So it's really interesting to see that from a biological perspective. But it's also really interesting on the side that we really, that we really don't know a lot of science about trans people. Right. And I think it has a lot to do with the amount of oppression that they face for so long, because it was such a shamed upon concept that we really haven't done any scientific research on it from in terms of biological perspective. Is it really important to me that we don't have biological reasoning? Not really. I don't think it discredits anybody in any way, because I do believe the science is out there. We just don't know what it is yet. And until then, it doesn't really matter to me. But in terms of HRT or hormone treatment, I can definitely see what you mean by like seeing it as almost like it's something that's wrong. Like, it's something that needs to be fixed within you. Sort of similar, right. Like you said, similar replacing. To like replacing your hormones. Like, that's like incorrect, or like that's wrong. Exactly. And I can definitely see how it has like a very negative connotation to it. So yeah, I think, again, take my opinion with a grain of salt, but I think, hormone therapy, or like, oh, I'm getting estrogen, or I'm getting T, like, I think that's a lot more accepting of trans people and trans therapy and stuff. So, yeah, it's really interesting from a scientific perspective.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of cool because you got to see several people's transitions and how those hormones that are very different from other classified as hormones, so transitioning hormones affected us, and they can affect people differently in how we take it. I bet that was very interesting, getting kind of an outside perspective on that.
Yeah, it's actually like, really, really neat. For lack of a better word. Yeah, for lack of a better word, it's just neat. It's interesting. It's interesting to see how, first of all, just how hormones affect humans in general and how they regulate, even in cis people too. Estrogen is obviously a huge factor in women's reproduction and or cis women's reproduction.
Right.
So yeah, just in general, it's something that I would love to learn more about as I proceed in my career and proceed in my field. But until then, we just have to let trans people be trans people and get T or estrogen in the process.
Right.
So yeah, that's a really interesting topic. I really like that one.
And speaking of HRT,
yes,
I have been, hormones, testosterone specifically for me. I have been off testosterone for several years now, and that's for reasons that I'll probably discuss in a video later on. But the biggest thing that has come back is my period, and I think that's like something that we, especially now that like we've been roommates for over a year now.
Yeah.
That we definitely.
We have talked about it a lot. Yeah, we have. It is interesting.
They're nasty.
They are, first of all, yes, they are nasty. They're natural, they're wonderful, they're beautiful, but they are gross. And I personally do not like them.
Personally. 1 out of 10 stars.
I would rate periods 1 out of 10, yes. But yeah, it is actually really interesting, having, having a trans friend who is very openly trans and is very comfortable with that. And makes jokes about your genitals with other people.
Especially, like, new people. I do, like, sometimes you'll invite a friend over and I'll just, like, burst into the room talking about being, like, a nude model or my nether region, Oh,
yeah. So, yeah, that's another thing for all you lovely fans out there. Sean is a nude model for the university. He's probably mentioned it in his animations before. And we have one of his pictures hung up in our apartment.
From the students, like...
Yeah, the students
they're amazing artists.
Yeah, so Sean poses and they draw him. And they're, like Sean said, they're incredible. And so Sean has a couple of them hung up on the walls, which no one minds, but it's just hilarious to me that people come in and they see your privates and they go, oh,
no,
I see.
That's there.
That's interesting.
It's in our living room. And when you walk right in, you're in the living room.
Yes.
So it's immediately there.
Yes, immediately to the right is Sean and all his glory.
And to your right, you'll see some nipples.
But yeah, so yeah, it's interesting about periods. So obviously, we both think that pads and tampons should be in both men and women restrooms for
and free, like
and
we don't
free.
even get them free anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a given.
Please,
yeah,
if they can hand out free condoms, why can't they hand out free?
It would just be so
like
convenient. Like the amount of times I've been on campus and just like did not have a tampon with me and really needed one. Oh, tragic. Absolutely tragic.
And then I've seen like 1 or 2 of the like dispenser things, but it costs like 50 cents. Who carries around coins anymore at this point?
I know, like I don't.
I'm fishing around for coins. Please help.
I'm desperate.
Help. What's really hard for trans people specifically though is if you do get your period, because even on testosterone, we do sometimes we can have like spotting or a random like once in a blue moon just random period, and that's like not only super anxiety giving and dysphoria and whatnot, but also like you don't have the resources, and no trans person like really wants to go up to this woman and be like, excuse me, please help. I need some.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in general, it's so weird to me how, like, shameful it feels to, like, even care. Like, I remember, like, Even to this day, like, if I'm holding a tampon, like, I will try everything in my power to, like, conceal it and, like, make sure no one sees me with this tampon in my hand.
Exactly.
Which is so goofy, because, like, everyone knows that, like, I have a period. Like, it's not a secret.
You have a period?
I know!
I had no idea.
I know, and if someone saw me holding a tampon, they probably wouldn't even, like, think twice about it.
Yeah.
But, you know, we still have this weird shamefulness about, like, having periods and stuff, and it, like you said, it's even worse for trans men and or, you know, gender non-binary people who have periods. Because it adds to the embarrassment, it adds to, like, they're gonna know. They're gonna know.
They're not gonna know.
How will they know?
But yeah, I hate periods.
Who doesn't? They're just not a fun time. Yeah. And that's my 2 cents on that. And your 2 cents. Let's see.
We were gonna talk about Pride, but specifically Pride festivals.
Yeah.
Because we live nearby a very large Pride festival.
In a city that will remain unnamed.
Right. And so that very large Pride festival often becomes a party.
A party,
scene.
yeah.
So I was wondering, you know, you've been to, and we've both been together to the same festival.
Right.
And so what when you hear the term or the word Pride Festival, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, so it's a good question. As for me personally, when I first think of Pride, I think of what I've experienced as Pride, which is the parties. Because that's what I've been to. You know, the huge, like, parades and, like, parties and all these fun colors and everything's rainbow and there are men walking around and
barely anything
and leather and gags and all the fun stuff.
And they're like tossing beads.
Yeah.
Tossing random rainbow stuff.
It's like a gay Mardi Gras. Gayer Mardi Gras.
Yes. That's true.
So yeah, I would definitely say that's like what first, like, initially comes to my mind when I think of, like, Pride festivals specifically. So I'd be very interested to see what you have to say.
So, I don't know if this is because my main experience, because I've been to other Prides, but my main experience has been that really big one. But when I hear Pride Festival, I sometimes I just get this, like, little ping of anger because it has become a party scene that a lot of cis people join in on. And then after that day, nothing. Like, little to no support.
Right.
So it's like, why are you coming?
Right.
You just not going to support us in the after. And they totally could support us after. Like, but, you know, there's this whole June month is when all the companies come out and say that they're LGBT friendly. And then all the other months, all 11 other months are when they don't mention it ever again.
Right.
So it's nice, and I like that our first experiences with Pride were these massive, and you're celebratory of being LGBTQ+.
Yeah.
And I love that. But when I'm there and I see a lot of people getting, like, drunk and partying, and, you know, we're still battling every other day of the year. And it is good to take a break and have our day. I just, what really bothers me is that I guess this is going to Google it, but in our really big festival, it's Saturday usually. It's all on a Saturday. And then Sunday, we have the Trans March. And the Trans March is a very sad day, where trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming people gather together and we march. And we're sad. And it's not a festival. It's not fun. It's sad. And, I mean, it's a march.
Yeah.
And we're marching for our lives. We're marching for...
Is it more of a protest, or is it, like, in memoriam of people?
I think it's more just... we're not directly protesting anything, but we are protesting for our rights.
Your right to be trans,
yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, to be out. And
yeah.
Yeah. So, what's disappointing is I have gone to both. And the amount of people that go to one and then not the other is just, like, really sad. Like, if you're going to dedicate, your weekend, you could go and vote. You could show up, say hello, just drop in. But I remember, like, my mom taking me and going to the festival, and the next day, it was my first trans march. I thought it was going to be another festival. I thought we would have, like, this one day of the year where we could be happy and have this day. And instead it was, like, silent, and it was just really dreary because there wasn't anyone there. And it was, like, very small.
So, would you say, obviously, someone who, such as myself, who is not in the LGBT community, I have a very different experience of Pride, in Pride festivals, but also Pride in general, than you would.
Yeah.
Someone who is in the LGBT community. That being said, though, do you think there's a significant gap between the experiences of, within the LGBT community? For example, a gap between gay people and lesbians or bisexuals and trans or non-binary people. Do you think there's a huge gap there?
And that goes into kind of like the history of LGBT, and like that as those four, which even before then started with G, being like gay coming first, and now it's lesbian coming first, in terms of the lettering. But there's this whole thing about, like, why is the T there? Like, it should just be LGB, because of the sexualities, and then there's gender. Right. And then there's the trans community who say, like we kind of, it's this weird juggling thing, but if it weren't for us being on this LGBT, T, we would not have gotten as far as we are now.
Yeah.
And being represented and getting rights that we deserve.
Yeah.
So, I definitely think there is, like, a huge gap, and I think what could help that is if people just took the time to go to that other festival and kind of, like, learn more. Because there is a lot of vital information even just going to any march. And learning about that community and why they are marching. So.
Yeah. So basically, if you're going to go to Pride, especially as someone who is not in the LGBT community, at least be there to support when it's needed and when it's, like, necessary, as opposed to just being there for the fun. Because Pride is very fun.
But it took us a long time to get to the place where we can have a day of festivity.
Right, so enjoy the fun, but, like, maybe care about your gay friends on the side, trans friends on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that, we came a long way, and we're still fighting at it. It's not like gay marriage. Done!
Everything's solved.
Yes.
There is no more oppression.
Delightful. Saved.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for chatting.
Of course. One more question for you, though. What is something that cis people can do in their everyday lives to be more supportive of trans people? Like, what's, like, one, like, really easy thing do you think that we can do?
Yeah.
As a society to best help you?
That's a great question. Learning. And, like, continued learning. And that includes, like, learning about things that may seem controversial to you.
Okay.
I try my best to talk to people who do not have opinions that are the same to mine. Because I want to learn why, and I want to hear their position on it.
Right.
And you can have a conversation with someone who doesn't, who you guys may butt heads, but you can have, like, a civil conversation with someone and learn something, even small little chunks out of it.
Yeah.
And hopefully grow, because in every conversation you should be listening, and not just kind of letting it flow through one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
But I think that's, like, the whole reason I made this channel, was because I wanted a place where people could, like, get educated. And, I was always the trans person, like you said, who is very open and very out. And you don't have to be that way. Like, you can be stealth, and you can live your life without anyone really knowing. And that's totally chill. But I felt Like, I wanted to be the person that answered the questions or was asked the ones that were, like, not good questions. You know, like, people would be like, so what was your name before transitioning? And instead of, like, getting mad or just saying no, I sit them down and I'm like, okay, that's about, like, I understand why you would ask that. You're very curious, and that's not a question you should ask trans people because that's, and then you go down that road. I think that's a lot better of a way to approach that conversation. But to get to the start of, or answering your question, that educating yourself and educating others in your family or friends, or even just people that you meet day to day, and getting to know more people and more opinions. I think that's the best thing for really any topic in life.
Yeah.
So, especially the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sweet.
Do it again next time.
Yeah.
See you next time.
On our next drawing episode.
Let's go make dinner.
Okay.